All right, welcome to the Coder Kids podcast episode number 33. Today we have on the podcast a guest who is really awesome, Jonathon Bobrow, and he is the founder of Move38. As always, Jeff Ward and James Thornock were your hosts.
Hello.
And on the podcast, as always, we are deconstructing and decrypting technology for parents of kids who are interested in technology. So
yeah, and
yeah,
James, I'm going to throw out that this is also an excellent episode for educators because we are talking a lot about, I think, things that can get young kids excited about engineering, things that can get young kids excited about technology in general. Jonathon founded this company called Move38, as James mentioned, but one of the products that they've made is called Blinks, and I think I'm going to have to get myself a set. And shoot, let's put a link in the YouTube.
Yeah.
So
okay, we can do it.
I like John a lot. I was really impressed with him, and I hope you'll stick around and listen to his awesome perspective and story. James, any quick updates that you have that you want to give?
Yeah, so finally connected all the pipes last night in my house so that I have running water.
A little bit of context, in case you haven't listened to previous episodes. There was a massive cold blast that came to Houston, destroyed everyone's pipes, and James has spent the last, how long has it been? 2 weeks?
See, the thing is, I've only spent like 3 full working days on it. Yeah. So whenever I get a chance, I'll work on the pipes, and did like a 13-hour work day on the pipes and have completely replaced all of the pipes in my entire house with my father-in-law's help. So shout out to Bill. But it's been fun, and hopefully my family will get to move back into this house tomorrow or the next day or something. And then we have to learn how to do drywall and paint and spackle and all that fun creator stuff, right? Let's
pass it off to the interview portion.
That's right.
You can learn how to be a creator yourself. So.
All right,
welcome. And today we have on our podcast Jonathon Bobrow. He is a founder of a lot of, I don't know if I should just call you a tinkerer, a hobbyist. He's a professional, but to be clear, like, he's a builder and has built some really cool things. The three things that I think are kind of Kickstarter based that he kind of got his start with in his entrepreneurial journey, it sounds like, and maybe he can tell us his whole story, but it sounds like he started with like a color matching system for Moo, which, if you're familiar with Moo, it's like business cards and things like that. So maybe he can tell us a little bit about that. Then he created a building block, like origami Lego type thing called Troxes. And then most recently, he is working on, or has released a game. It's like a tabletop game that uses technology. It's called Blinks. And so those are the 3 things that Jonathon's been working on most recently, it sounds like. Although if you look at his website, you can see that he works on a lot of things. So, Jonathon, without further ado, welcome to the podcast. We're really happy to have you.
Thanks so much for having me, Jeff. Thanks for having me, James.
I was hoping that you could start out just by telling us a little bit about. I really want to know about your whole journey, but maybe we can start with the most recent thing, which is Blinks, and you can tell us a little bit about that and what it is and why you're excited about it.
Yeah, so Blinks is. I've been working on it for the better part of 6 years now, and it didn't start. So just so you have a sense of what Blinks are, so Blinks is the world's first smart tabletop game system. And one of the common misconceptions is that it's a game, but it's not a game. They're actually intelligent game pieces with the ability to learn an infinite amount of games. And the thing that is really neat is that when I started this, started thinking about this as a game system, really about 4 years ago, was that we knew that for something to be a game system, you need to kind of have this whole range of experiences. You can't just have one experience over and over again. And so to test that, I built it as an open platform and allowed other people to make their own games for it. And so by building Blinks as an open platform where anybody can make their own games, we've had dozens of games come to the system. We've published now 30 games on the game system, but the kinds of games and the kinds of play and the things that people are creating is perhaps the most exciting part for me, because it's like creating a paintbrush and a canvas and then seeing what painters do with it. So that's been the most exciting thing for me about Blinks and the community. Just for a sense, last year we had 200 developers with people interested in making their own games for Blinks, and completely organically that went to well over 800 last year. And so these are people who are buying Blinks developer kits to make their own games for the game system.
That's awesome. How does one go about creating a game on Blinks? Is it a certain programming language? Do you have it? I mean, you said it's open source, so people can get access to it, but like what kind of background do you need if you were to create a unique game?
Yeah, so if you're familiar with Arduino, Arduino gets downloaded millions of times, maybe daily at this point. It's like a really commonly used intro to programming platform. And so Blinks are built on top of Arduino. It's its own custom hardware type, and programming them, we've brought Blinks to game jams where everybody in the room has never seen a Blink, and in the end of a 12-hour game jam, everybody's got full games. So they're really easy to code for. We wrote our own custom API, kind of a very basic language on top of C++. And when you want a Blink to glow red, you type set color parentheses red. And so we're seeing parents and their children making games together, professional game designers that make really amazing video games, and then board game designers who've never touched code before.
That's kind of fun. So do you see this as kind of an olive branch to both the gaming community and the tabletop community, or was it supposed to like bridge that gap?
Yeah, so myself, I noticed, I've always played lots of games. Growing up, I was a game lover of video games. I grew up with an NES and Super Nintendo and then 64 and really loved, I actually played Atari growing up. I really loved these core mechanic games. While I was, I think I mentioned a little bit earlier, I came to New York to build interactive museum installations, and I found myself actually working on and building games for a museum setting. And I love the space where all these things that we can do with computers integrate with our physical world. And in museums, you can do that with projection mapping and these really magical experiences that we don't get to. It feels like you hopped into the future. When I headed to MIT, I was specifically interested in pursuing, all this stuff is shrinking down. It's becoming embedded into our everyday lives. So what are the kinds of experiences that you can make where you have the, fun and excitement and juiciness of video games, those kinds of things, but the physical affordances of actually being able to sit down together, play something, the things I like about board games where friends would be like, hey, come on over, let's play games tonight. And it's a social experience more than anything else.
One thing that I saw in your intro video for Blinks was you were talking about, and again, it launched on Kickstarter. I assume that now it's off Kickstarter, is that?
Yeah, so we've launched 3 Kickstarters for Blinks. The first one is where we launched the game system, and we started shipping that in 2020. And then we launched 2 more for 12 games designed the first one for 6 games designed by the community, other game designers. And then the most recent one was our Epic Adventure expansion pack. And all 6 of those games, once again, designed by other game designers on the system. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just going to ask, though, in your intro video, you're talking a lot about how you were excited about Blinks because it kind of is entertainment, it's coding, it's all these new games, but it takes away the screen element. So we're not spending as much time on the screen. Can I get a little bit about your philosophy about screens? Are we using them too much? I mean, what is your angle there?
This is a recurring theme on our podcast. We constantly ask people
We're
about their
trying to
relationship
solve.
with screens.
We're trying to solve the question: how much screen time is too much screen time?
Yeah, yeah.
Go ahead, Jonathan.
It's a great question. I have to say that my feeling is not so much, I try and abstract it away from thinking about screen, but what you're doing with the screens. And I think that screens allow us to exhibit some not so healthy behavior at a certain point. So from my standpoint on that is if I have, I need a balance. Like when I grew up playing baseball, I was on the baseball field, at least 3 days a week for like the greater part of 20 years. And being able to be outdoors and interact with other people and not have tech in my hands was something that was like really valuable for me. And even still these days, it's like, I think it's so important to be able to, not only get outdoors, but also make sure that the focus is on being social. I think as human beings, we just, there's so much to gain and learn from each other. I think that like all of the world's problems could be solved by an improvement in people knowing how to interact with each other better. Like it's just, I think they're our biggest hurdles. And so I think when screens are isolating, I think that that's a problem. And I think that that's what I would say. I mean, I could also speak to like blue light or it affects on sleep, but like I think all of those things fall to me as like a secondary of like just thinking about, are you being able to exhibit healthy social behavior and learning, or are you plugging in and turning off your creative brain and simply turning on your consumptive?
Yeah. I had a quick question about the shape. So, you obviously chose a hexagon. So for those of you who are not watching the YouTube version, it's a hexagon, and maybe you'll show us. But yeah, there we go. On cue. There we go. Why not a square? Why not a circle? Why not a pentagon? And then I have a follow-up question. So,
of course.
Oh, but after you're done, sorry. I should. I only want you to have to remember one question at a time. This is supposed to be an easy, just a fun conversation.
Yeah, lighthearted.
So, why the hexagon?
Yeah.
So, simply put, the hexagon is the highest-sided, regularly tessellating shape.
Okay.
And so,
can you define tessellating? That was not my follow-up question, but it has become one.
So tessellating is that you can regularly tile or pattern the shape.
Okay.
And so a hexagon is the highest-sided one. You can't take a 7-sided piece and tile it out evenly. And
is that a septagon?
It is a septagon.
So you got a septagon, an octagon, a nonagon, and a decagon in that order, right?
Yeah. Septagon would not work.
Okay.
That's what you.
Trying to flex my polygonal knowledge.
The cool thing about it is like, for me, it was an easy choice, and it was an easy choice because the thing, and actually you'll see this as kind of a pattern in my work. So like, you brought up one of the other projects, Troxes, which is a origami-like building block. It's based on triangles rather than squares. And the reason for that is because we've got enough squares in our world. Like, thinking rectilinearly, thinking straight up and down, left and right, that's something that we're presented with all the time. And I feel like when we think outside of that box, quite literally, it challenges us to think differently. And so, by making building blocks that are based off of the equilateral triangle as a base building form, you have to think about the different kinds of things you might build. That shape led to, the way proteins fold, and viruses are commonly icosahedral, a form made strictly out of equilateral triangles. Hexagons, on this hand, people's most common frame, reference point, is beehives. And the reason why beehives and honeycombs are hexagonal is because when you pack circles as closely together as you can, you get that, once again, highest sided, regularly tessellating shape. And there's some really nice background as well on hexagon being this recurring symbol when people think about symbols. It's something that on its own kind of feels relatively simple, but together actually kind of represents complexity.
I love the honeycomb example. I think that's really fantastic because the bees, they want to use their space as
efficiently as possible.
As efficiently, exactly. James, go ahead with your follow-up. What was
it?
Man.
I'm
curious. I'm sure John is curious too.
Yeah, so my question, which this leads perfectly into, I feel like you have you watched CGB Gray's Hexagons are the Bestagons video?
Oh my goodness, no.
Wow.
Because he uses the bee example in the video. So I thought you had to have. Do you know that creator? Yeah. Have you are you familiar with that creator on YouTube?
I'm not familiar.
I'm not either.
You're gonna love his stuff. Very logical, object oriented thinker. He doesn't think about people, and he thinks about things. At least that in his own words. So I'll link that in the podcast if you want to watch that video. But talks about a lot of the things you talk about. There's also strength reasons, which you didn't mention. But yeah, I'm a big fan of hexagonal art. If I were to turn this camera around, well, actually, hold on. This is just special bonus.
Awesome.
Special bonus footage only for YouTube viewers.
If you can imagine a hexagon, I'm sure it's not hard to imagine. But these are hexagonal sound panels, and I have them on my wall that are trying to absorb some of the echo in this house. There's not anything special about that shape in particular. I just like the look of it. So
people will be really surprised when they come to find out that we spent 20 minutes talking about hexagons. But
I would be surprised because I didn't know I was gonna do that. I have a hexagonal coaster. Anyway, I think I'm done.
I'm gonna ask my next question. That's not about hexagons. John, I was wondering, just still talking about Blinks. Could you give us? So you said there's 30 games out. Is that still the correct number?
Yeah. So let's see. 27 is from the regularly available sets right now. There are the next 3 games launching in the middle of April. And there are some other games. There's lots of games on the forum that anyone with a developer kit can be loading up and playing and play testing before the other games actually release.
So my question is, thinking about one of the simplest or one of the original games, if you could just give us a sample of what these Blinks are capable of. And then also I have a 5-year-old son, and I love trying to teach him logic and playing little games with him and things. So I'm wondering, first question, what's the basic game, or what's the original game type that you were thinking of or something? And then what's an appropriate game for like young kids?
Yeah. So the first thing we started with was, because blinks light up and glow and have buttons on top and you hit them, we said, okay, we're not going to make Simon.
Right.
Because
Yeah,
it was
you
the first
could.
game. It was like, you could make Simon. But we avoided that specifically. It was like, okay, what are the other things you can do with it? However, we did want everybody to get an easy entry point. So when you say, what's a game you could play with your 5-year-old? The first game I would break out would be Wham, which is effectively whack-a-mole. However, the neat thing about Wham is it's so simple because, your goal is to hit the moles as they pop up. They get faster and faster over time with how they're going disappearing. But the neat thing about it is, like, you can set it up in one arrangement and it's pretty easy. You can grab some more blinks and it gets more difficult. Different arrangements have different difficulty. You can split them up so you can challenge your 5-year-old. Okay, you're going to play with 3 blinks and I'm going to play with 9. And so I like that game for its accessibility because anybody can hop into it in a matter of seconds. But the gameplay scales really well and, is really fun to play also in groups.
That's great.
Another game that I think your 5-year-old would love that's part of the game system is called Group Therapy. In Group Therapy, you have 2 types of blinks. There are introverts and there are extroverts. And the introverts, they want to be by themselves. And the extroverts, they need to be next to another blink. And so the game starts out and there's sort of like a bumble across it. They all kind of, and then they reveal their personality. And the extroverts, I believe, are pink, like bright pink, and animate. And the introverts are this like quiet purple. And you've got to, within 5 seconds, split all those introverts, get them out of the pack and get them themselves, and make sure you get all the extroverts together into a group. I've never seen a game like it. The designer who made that game has a award-winning iOS game called Limelight, and is a brilliant puzzle game designer. And this game was just like something he came up with in a day, and we were having so much fun with it and watching people play it that it was like, wow, this is a blast. Like, this is so real easy game to jump into in the game system.
Well, I know for a fact that James is now Googling Limelight. So I'm going to ask a follow-up question.
Maybe.
James, do you want to talk any more about blinks? Because I want to ask John about some other stuff in our remaining time. So do you have any
Yes,
other
I
things you want to talk
do.
about?
I do.
Okay.
Gosh, I have so many questions. Do you foresee doing anything that's not blinks, but maybe exercise related? Part of this is like alternate reality, right? Where it's not virtual reality, it's not playing with dirt and sticks, it's somewhere in the middle. And do you foresee any exercise application? Because I've seen companies that have tried to do it and fail, and some succeed. 6 to start. There's a game called Zombies Run that I think has been fairly successful, but I want to, personally, I want to see a lot more in that space. Do you have any thoughts about exercise and its relationship to like a physical but digital game?
Yeah, so you mentioned that hexagons are really strong. Blinks themselves, they can be thrown around, bounced off of stuff. Like, they're really sturdy devices. And we did that so that you could make games where you're flicking them and you run. You don't have to worry about this delicate game piece. One of the games on the system, designed by Jonathan West, another game designer, it's called Dynamo, and it involves effectively like batting blinks out of each other's hands. And so you need to keep your dynamo alive, and you can play one version of it, which is very polite and on the table, or you can play another version of it where each person has a blink in their hand, and it's, all of a sudden you're moving around the room, you're trying to swap blink, and it's like, to your question on like, do I think about exercise and related to Blinks? It wasn't my number one. Like, it wasn't like, oh, okay, let's make this for exercise or. But I've seen game designers approach games in how do I make this more physical, and how do I incorporate physicality in my games? I think, Jeff, to your point on like a game that you'd play with your 5-year-old, like. Because these games are, because they're physical, you have the ability to go, okay, like you can incorporate, if you put part of whack-a-mole on one side of the table and on the other, now you've got a version where you're running back and forth. It's like if exercise is important to you, and that's something that, it's like, and I think that, exercise is just one of the things that helps make, it boosts our energy. It makes, play, it's one thing that can make play more fun. And so I think that balance of exercise and, mental exercise, finding that balance is important. As far as like, you mentioned actually exercise, I have as I'm a maker, I made like a band so I can put a blink on my wrist. And so I use it as like a Pomodoro timer to, stay focused for a period of time. But like, I maybe I'll think about, I could incorporate a game into my morning jog.
That's awesome. John, I know you spent some time at the MIT Media Lab, and I saw in a video that you got a master's degree in playful systems. Is that true?
That's right.
Yeah. So my question is, we're big fans of Scratch, obviously, and Scratch is a product of the Media Lab, and we love the fact that it has opened up coding to a demographic that really didn't have really an accessible way to do this kind of stuff before. And so we're huge fans of it. We do it in a lot of our classes. But I wanted to get your feelings more about the broader education system in the United States, and are we teaching kids in the right way to be creators, to be creative, or do you think that there's some changes that need to happen?
I think change is always a good thing. I think that it's how progress is made. So I think that, in short, I think that our education system is hindered by a lot of antiquated industrial revolution style, like processes. That said, I think there's value to structure in our lives. And so I think that there are a lot of things that traditional school offers us as well. My biggest thing about that, and I think the Media Lab is such an amazing space for that, is I think the biggest change and the most important change in recent is that technology is more and more incorporated in our everyday lives. And we need to be raising a generation that can think about designing the future rather than simply consuming it. And so Scratch is incredibly powerful for being able to get you into thinking about, oh, I'm a maker. And code is not just for this kind of person or this kind of person. So I think that I would say for me, the most important thing for schools is really giving students the opportunity to create and the tools to create. And I think from a teaching perspective, I'm actually teaching a class at NYU this semester with Blinks. And I think it's also so important for teachers out there, if teachers are listening, that we are the biggest students. So like being, okay to learn from and experiment, I think teaches the students to be okay with learning from and experimenting. And I think that culture is just so important for the future of for the future of education, for the future of learning. Yeah.
I love it. That's awesome.
Yeah,
I mean, go ahead, James. Sorry.
Yeah, no, it's fine. The teacher that you don't want to be a student of is one who's stopped being a student, right? Like you're absolutely right, because I've been in those classes and it's just like the teacher looks like they're dead inside. They're retiring at the end of the year. They're collecting a paycheck. And look, this is not all teachers. This is probably a minority. But everyone has had one of those teachers. And I feel like it's almost a waste of time, right? In some ways, it awakened in me like, well, what can I do with this time productively? How can I use this time? But man, that's rough. So what tools do you think would be useful in the classroom? You said, if a school gives tools to students to help them learn, what kind of tools do you think would be useful?
Hands-on tools. I think one of the things things that you can get in and play with. I think that we learn best when we're in a playful state. And I think incorporating play into the classroom is more important. I think that play has all these benefits. It reduces your fear of failure. I think that's one of the biggest things in the classroom that I see these days is that's too tough, or I'm not sure if I can do that. And creating an environment where people can play and accomplish something in play, I think is just so important. So as far as specific tools, I mean, I think Arduino is a wonderful thing for classes. There's teachers bringing Blinks into the classroom and working on curriculum, even just Scratch as well. I think additionally, it's important to not be too discouraged if those tools are really important, but also just like paper is, it's like being able to tear something up and break it apart and crumple it up or toss it. The more quickly you can start to make versions of the ideas you have real. In design work, we do paper prototypes before you build a website, right? You move the pieces around before you have to code them into place. And so I think classrooms have all of those. Those are traditional tools, but they actually work really great when starting to when incorporating them. You don't want to separate. This is computer time and this is craft time. It's like, what's the space in between?
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, as a teacher, I taught for 6 years. James taught for 1, and I felt like in the early days of my teaching career, it was extremely creative. I think the kids understood that I was learning how to be a great teacher, and there was just a lot of fun with learning. And then as the years went on for me, I felt like it became more of a I wanted to. I don't know if you ever heard of Rafe Esquith. He's a famous teacher actually in LA, who taught for years and years, but has this very much we're going to be creative. We're going to just not really follow the traditional system, but they're in the traditional system, but they just did a lot of things that were outside the box, I guess you might say. And I loved that part of teaching. And I think it was when I got away from that actually teaching wasn't as fun for me anymore. And so anyway, I think it's a great lesson, especially for educators out there. It's just kind of, I don't know. Rafe Esquith, it's kind of a long story, but kind of fell out of favor. But he had a book that I read when I was a teacher called Teach Like Your Hair's on Fire. And I think it just goes to show I don't know, just don't give in to those kind of traditional norms. One thing I wanted to ask you about that I thought was really cool, because like I said, I was a teacher and I taught lower elementary. And so I'm very familiar with these, I think they're called Jenny clocks or something. But you created a project, and you said you're an interactive art before, and you created this one called Watch Now. And I wanted to just talk to you about that for a minute and just see what was that about, and what was like the reaction that you got to it.
Yeah, so it's funny. I haven't thought about that project for a little while, but
It's on your website though, John.
It is on my. I haven't been on my website for a while, so that project actually was a collaboration with Philip Tiongson, who is a founder of an interactive design studio, and we were asked to create a piece for an art show, thinking about time. And Philip had, I think, maybe a 3-year-old at the time, and we were thinking about, like, time manipulation. And one of the things that actually really got me into working with media and as an art form was video, like being able to scrub back and forward, and just having that control is there's something very I don't know, otherworldly. It feels like magic the first time you put a video in reverse or scrub through it. And what this project was there's so much content being posted on YouTube all the time. Like, we've got access to this space where people are posting all the time. What would happen? There's a project around serendipity. What would happen if you could land on videos that were published at a specific time? And what does the interface for that look like? And so in this project, what we did was I hacked a Judy clock.
That's what I call Judy clocks.
A Judy clock, which is something that I hadn't seen since maybe my kindergarten years. But it's one of those clocks where you can grab each of the hands and you learn how to tell time on an analog clock. I thought, there's just such a nice tactility to it, and you really get that. Okay, I'm at this time. It's like turning a knob on a radio, so we use that as the mechanism. And what it would do is, when you set the hands to that time, the Arduino connected to the computer would then query for a video, some random video at that time, and start playing it on a screen. And when people weren't interacting with it, there was a motor in the clock so that it would return to the current time, and then simply continue playing videos.
That's really cool. I don't know.
That's wild.
I think one thing that's interesting, and James, I'm sure you can agree with this, is like last week we were talking to an engineering professor who was talking to us about 3D circuits. And I don't know. While I was talking to him, I was like, man, that sounds so cool. I wish I could have like learned more about that when I was younger, so that I could like understand it better and be into that. And I kind of think the same about what you're describing, like interactive art. It's like kind of a cool thing, and I understand completely why that's your inspiration for these other projects like Blinks that you've worked on, because it is just so cool. And I hope that just listening to you talk about it, maybe a parent out there, an educator, can also be excited about it and want to share that with their kids.
Yeah,
James.
I was just gonna agree. Like, yeah. We're all about Coder Kids. Like, we're all about inspiring kids, right? That's why we have summer camps. That's why we have after school programs. That's why we have this podcast. That's why we have a blog. That's why we have, YouTube videos. Like, we want kids to be inspired. We want them to be able to. Go ahead.
We want kids to turn out like John.
That's right. That just like
I can't speak to John's mental stability, but
but to the things that he creates
from a career perspective, I think you've had a pretty awesome career, and I love the fact that you've taken some risks to be able to create things that are important to you and important to the world. So tell me a little bit, John, just in a brief time that we have, because I know you told me that you have a lot going on today. Tell tell me a little bit about your briefly entrepreneurial journey in creating this stuff. As I'm sure it hasn't been easy.
Yeah, of course. Well, I guess first and foremost, I just wanted to address something you said, which is about like, as far as parents and what they can bring to their kids, and like, just at the end of the day, like it's about raising nice human beings, people who treat each other well and respect each other well, and have a learning mindset. The only thing that I think has, the thing that led me to entrepreneurship was, my parents that fostered a constant learning mindset. My dad surrounded me with like, puzzles or chess sets and things that were like things that I could engage with. So I guess I can step back for the entrepreneurial journey. I've always been a maker. And I've also always been, whenever I create something, I think about like, how does somebody else engage with this thing? Like, I have fun with this, or I made this because I needed this thing. It solves a problem in my life. But then I'm always really eager about making it, like I started by making things for other people. And then whenever I was making it, I was like, oh, okay, that actually could help somebody else out too. And so for me, I think it's that journey started with just being putting the work out there. So one of my first products that took off with viral success was an Apple accessory, and it was called Keybit, and it would hold this MagSafe adapter that a bunch of people had back in, I think, 2012, and this was. I had this idea. I made a version of it for myself, and I brought it into the office, and people said, "Can I get one of those?" And then I was like, "Oh, maybe I should make these available." And with boxes, I made them because it was a thought experiment, and then they went into a museum on display, and people were stealing them, and I thought, okay, well, if they're being stolen, maybe we should make them available so people can buy them.
Sell them at the gift shop, yeah.
So that's kind of where it started, was when you're making stuff and notice people are like, like stealing them. It's like, okay, let's figure out a way for you to do this legitimately and sustainably. And so, and then, one of the neatest things for me in the past, I founded Move38 a little over 4 years ago. When I started the company, it was just a co-founder. And at this point, the company is about 6 of us full time. And the neatest thing has been growing, meeting people along the way who can add so much and take it to the next level. And some of the most exciting things for me are just ahead. Like, it's the momentum on the game system and the kinds of things that I can't wait to be sharing with the world are just the kinds of things that happen when you bring people together. And so now I'm just trying to enjoy as much as I can the process of working with other people to elevate each other's work.
Awesome.
That's awesome. Well, John, we'll go ahead and wrap it up. I know hey, teaching a class and running a company, I'm surprised you even had time to talk to us, but thanks so much for taking the time. If people want to reach out to you, should they go to the Move38 website or check out Blinks, for example? What would be the best thing?
Move38.com is the place to go. We're quick to respond if you fill out the contact info there. I also keep an eye on that stuff, so I really love connecting with people.
Awesome. Thanks, John.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Thanks, James. Thanks, Jeff.
All right.
Really
and I'll send you those videos. It'll be good. Good watching materials.
I can't wait. I'll share them with my class.
All right. I'll see you later.
Bye.
All right. Thanks again, John.